Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. Welcome to our forum on juvenile delinquency. Before we begin, let me introduce our two panels for today. On my right, we have Professor Damia, a criminologist and social researcher with 15 years of experience studying youth crime, who will discuss media and academic factors as well as the effects on youth and communities. And we have Dr. Ain, a certified forensic psychologist with experience of 20 years, who will discuss educational and psychological factors. Before we begin, let's first understand some key terms that are central to our discussion on juvenile delinquency. Firstly, juvenile delinquent or youth offender refers to a young person who has committed a criminal offence. A juvenile is defined as a person who is old enough to be held responsible for a crime but not yet considered an adult under the law. Meanwhile, a child is anyone under the age of 18 and also includes a person who has reached the age of criminal responsibility as defined in Section 82 of the Penal Code. Also states that the age of criminal responsibility, according to Section 82 of the Penal Code, that nothing done by a child under the age of 10 years constitutes an offence. Now, let's take a look at the statistic of crimes involving juvenile offenders in Malaysia, based on a study from the International Journal of Child, Women, Elderly and Disabled. Juvenile cases recorded were as follows. In 2016, 4,896 cases. In 2017, 5,443 cases. In 2018, 5,294 cases. In 2019, 4,833 cases. And in 2020, 5,342 cases. The community is increasingly concerned about the pattern and statistics of crimes involving children, either as victims or perpetrators. Among the crimes committed by juveniles, as reported to the Royal Malaysia Police, are theft, inflicting harm, breaking, rape, and robbery. In addition, bullying in school has become another major concern. It happens not only in elementary school but also in high schools, particularly boarding schools. Moving on, let's look at the latest statistic of juvenile cases in Malaysia. Based on data from the New Straits Times 2025, between 2023 and June 2025, there were over 5,633 juvenile crime cases reported in Malaysia, with Selangor recording the highest number of cases. Most offenders were aged 16 to 18, accounting for 3,637 cases, while the fewest cases, about 21 cases, involved children aged 7 to 10. If we look at the yearly breakdown, there were 2,006 cases in 2023, 2,442 cases in 2024, and 1,185 cases recorded up to June 2025. Here's the state breakdown of the total 5,633 juvenile crime cases reported between 2023 and June 2025. Selangor, with 892 cases, has the highest cases among other states, while Perlis with the lowest number of 116 cases. Now, let's take a look at bullying cases in Malaysia, which continue to be a worrying trend. According to the Ministry of Education, Fadila Siddiq, the data reported by the New Straits Times shows that in 2023, there were 6,528 bullying cases, while in 2024, the number increased to 7,681 cases. This marks an increase of about 70% in bullying cases from 2023 to 2024. Out of the total cases in 2024, 1,992 occurred in primary schools and 5,689 were recorded in secondary schools. These worrisome issues has heightened society's questioning of the safety of their children, the future of the youth, and the effectiveness of current measures in preventing juvenile misconduct. Therefore, we will further discuss and unveil the factors underlying juvenile delinquency, the effects of such misconduct, and the preventive measures with our panel today. Now, let's begin with the factors. Dr. Ain, can you explain the family factors that lead to juvenile delinquency?
Thank you, host Aina. I will begin with the family factors. First, when we talk about family structures, we refer to the family components which include divorce, arguing, being confined, too much freedom, and being beaten up. All these are among the factors influencing juvenile delinquency. Instability in the family unit may disrupt a child's sense of security and increase their vulnerability to external influences. For example, in cases of divorce, children may think that they are the reason behind their parents' breakup. This leads to a lack of love and affection, feelings of loneliness, and eventually, the children start finding companionship elsewhere. In many low-income families, the absence of fathers can lead boys to seek patterns of masculinity in delinquent group of peers. Next, for parental attitudes and influence, a lack of parental affection and support or parental indifference causes children to feel emotionally insecure and leads to poor personality development. Authoritarian parenting, where parents exercise excessive control and use harsh or strict comments, deprive children of the freedom to express themselves. This suppression pushes children to revolt against their parents, run away from home, and eventually enter a life of crime. Being beaten up by parents also shapes the child's character and can become the foundation for them becoming bullies in school. In situations where parents are emotionally distant, showing little warmth or love, providing minimal supervision, avoiding their children, and having few expectations for their behavior, this all increase the risk of delinquency because the parents are too overwhelmed by their own problems.
Thank you, Dr. Ain. Professor Damia, how about the media factor?
Thank you, Ms. Aina. So moving on to digital and media factors. So under these technology factors, with the widespread use of technology, especially social media platforms and online forums, cyber influencers now play a major role in shaping behavior. Exposures to cyberbullying, online radicalization, and harmful content contributes to delinquent behavior, particularly among adolescents. This is made worse because the anonymity and accessibility of online platforms allow harmful ideologies and antisocial behavior to spread easily. For media factors such as movies, music, television, and video games can shape attitudes and behaviors related to delinquency. Exposure to violence or delinquent content desensitize individuals to aggression and may normalize antisocial behavior. Television and movies have popularized the cult of heroes, which promotes justice through physical elimination of enemies. Movies can demonstrate violent acts that excite spectators, and this aggressive energy can then be transferred to everyday life, pushing individuals to engage in physical activities or aggression on the streets. Television can also portray ordinary daily violence, like penalties given by parents or peers for failing to study or for violating certain rules. Many times, violence in media is unreal or surreal. Wounds bleed less, real pain is rarely shown, and the consequences of violent behavior appear negligible. Some clear examples include KAHA, Kapla High Council. So this show peer pressure, aggression, and fighting to gain respect. This show also introduce fights in the school settings. Other than that, we also have Squid Games, which a series that present violence as a game or competition, which can desensitize viewers. For games, we have GTA, Grand Theft Auto, which involve crime, theft, violence, and reward criminals' activities. All this can influence adolescents towards aggressive or delinquent behaviors.
Thank you, Prof. Damia. That is a clear example of how these violent games, such as GTA or shows like Squid Game, present violence as entertainment, which affects impressionable adolescents. I will now explain the social factors that contribute to juvenile delinquency. First, we have peer influence. Adolescence is the stage where identity and belonging are being performed, so this period is crucial. Teenagers are much more susceptible to peer pressure. Their desire to be accepted and gain loyalty from their peers often overdrives rational decision-making. Probation officers reported that many juveniles engage in theft and vandalism simply to fit in with their group. This is not something unique to Malaysia. Research in the United States also shows that the resistance to peer influence increases with age, meaning younger adolescents are more vulnerable to negative peer dynamics. Next is gang involvement. Gangs provide a sense of belonging, identity, and protection to youth who feel alienated either at home or in school. For many, the gang becomes a surrogate family. But this comes at the cost of engaging in criminal activities such as drug use and street fights. In Malaysia, gang-related cases are often linked with theft and violent crime. Meanwhile, in Singapore, studies show that gang involvement increases the likelihood of offending because loyalty to the gang makes resigning or quitting extremely difficult. Lastly, the community environment also plays a big role. Adolescents living in high-crime neighborhoods are more likely to adopt delinquent behavior because they are more exposed to the violence, lack positive role models, and have limited access to recreational or educational facilities. Malaysian studies highlight that juveniles from urban poor areas are disproportionately represented in crime statistics. That aligns with criminology theories such as social disorganization theory, which states that disadvantaged neighborhoods foster delinquencies due to weak community structures and low social cohesion. On the social sides, peer pressure and joining delinquent groups can influence a young person's behavior. Living in high-crime areas increase exposures to violence and limit access to positive role models. Alright, let's continue. Prof. Damia, can you explain the economic factors?
Yes, sure. Moving on to the economic factor, which are also major contributors to juvenile delinquency. So the first factor is poverty. Poverty restricts access to resources and creates environments where neglect and poor supervision are common. Children from low-income families may resort to theft or other crime just to meet their daily necessities. In Malaysia, poverty rates among urban poor households have been linked to higher involvement in juvenile crime. Similarly, studies in the United States find that economic deprivation increases stress within families and limit opportunities, which heighten the risk of delinquency. Next is parental unemployment. Parental unemployment destabilizes the family structure and indirectly drives juveniles towards delinquency. Financial instability causes family conflict and reduced supervision, leaving juveniles vulnerable, neglected, and sometimes pressured to contribute financially, even through illegal means. So in Malaysia, probation officers observe that adolescents from households where parents are unemployed are more likely to be involved in truancy, petty theft, and substance abuse. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, parental joblessness correlates with higher youth involvement in minor crimes, as children attempt to compensate for their family's financial struggles. Parental unemployment is also linked to adverse childhood experience such as neglect and emotional stress, which are strongly associated with delinquent behavior later in life. Lastly is the inequality, which refers to the gap between those who have access to opportunity and those who do not. For adolescents, this gap can be damaging because it shapes their sense of identity. A sense of being left behind or perceive themselves as disadvantaged fosters hostility, resentment, and frustration towards authority and society. Some juveniles engage in delinquency as a form of rebellion. So this socio-economic inequality is linked to higher crime rates, especially among disadvantaged youth. Obviously, in Malaysia, inequality between the urban and rural communities creates frustration and a sense of exclusion. Youth in rural areas often face limited access to quality education, recreational facilities, and employment opportunities. When young people feel excluded from mainstream society, they are more likely to engage in antisocial behavior. In urban poor neighborhoods, adolescents are exposed to crime and violence more frequently. This relates closely to Robert Merton's strain theory, which explained that when legitimate opportunities to achieve success are blocked, individuals may turn to crime as an alternative path. This is especially relevant to adolescents, which are highly sensitive to social comparisons and often measure themselves against peers who appear more privileged.
Thank you, Prof. Damia. Dr. Ain, how about educational and psychological factor?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Aina. I will continue with the educational factors that contribute to juvenile delinquency. School play a critical role in shaping the attitudes, beliefs, and behavior of juveniles. Education is a place that provides both the necessary wisdom and the required skills for children, giving them a chance to make better decisions in life. One of the key issues is school failure and low academic achievement. Poor performance in school often leads to feeling of frustration and hopelessness. This lack of interest causes disengagement from school and from positive social norms. When academic failure happens repeatedly, it damages a student's self-esteem. Because of this, they begin searching for validation and a sense of belonging in other ways, such as gang membership or delinquent activities. Another factor is truancy and school dropouts, also known as chronic absenteeism. This often happens due to a lack of supervision and emotional supports from caring adults. Peer influence plays a role too. Peers can be positive, but they can also encourage juveniles to engage in delinquent behavior. Truancy, increased exposure to negative peer influences, such as spending more time with peers who also drop out or coming into contact with adults who are involved in criminal activities. The school environment itself can also influence delinquency. A positive school environment helps juveniles develop a sense of attachment to conventional social norms, but a negative school environment increases the risk of delinquent behavior. Bullying and discrimination make students feel isolated and disconnected. Underfunded school, overcrowded classroom, and lack of support services slow down learning and emotional development, which can lead to antisocial behavior. Next, I will explain about the psychological factors. First is poor impulse control and poor decision making, which stem from cognitive immaturity and underdeveloped executive functioning. This leads to impulsive choice and difficulty understanding consequences. Without emotional support from family or others, juveniles may seek validation through risky or rebellious actions. Childhood trauma and abuse also contribute heavily. This includes experience of physical violence, emotional mistreatment, or sexual abuse. Victims often believe they are wrong or worthless, and these negative emotions can lead them to express their pain by becoming aggressive bullies, thieves, or violent individuals. Delinquency becomes a defensive approach, a wrong-headed way to regain control over an environment that once made them feel powerless. This leads them to resolve conflict through violence or by trying to establish dominance over others. According to social learning theory, children imitate behavior they observe in their environment. So exposure to violent behavior, criminal activities, or substance abuse at home or in media can normalize delinquency. This trend theory also applies when people cannot achieve their goals through lawful means. They might commit crimes to vent frustration or lash out at the source of their dissatisfaction. Finally, we look at mental health disorders, which make juveniles more likely to engage in criminal behavior and antisocial activities involving hostility and aggression, such as vandalism, rebellion, stealing, lying, and rule breaking due to impulsiveness. One example is conduct disorder, which is marked by repetitive aggressiveness or deceitful behavior that violates the right of others or breaks major society rules. These youths often engage in physical fights, bullying, cruelty to animals or people, stealing, and vandalism. The second one is oppositional defiant disorder, ODD. It's a weaker version of CD, but involves frequent temper tantrums, refusal to obey, and hostile behavior. If ignored, it can develop into more severe psychological issues. Finally, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, is a long-term condition that often continues into adulthood. These youths struggle with paying attention, being hyperactive, impulsive, and following rules or routines. Because they often act without considering their consequences, this leads to poor academic performance and increased likelihood of returning to the justice system.
I agree with Dr. Ain, as I myself have a sister that suffers from ADHD. So I can relate that ADHD affects attention and impulse control, which increases the risk of rule breaking or aggressive behaviors if not managed. Next, let's discuss effects of juvenile delinquency. Professor Damia, what are the effects on teenagers?
Thank you, Ms. Aina. So I will now begin with the effect on teens. So the first impact is on their psychological well-being. When many teens involved in delinquent activities, they will experience anxiety as they constantly worrying about being caught or punished. So this will eventually lead to ongoing fear and stress. They also develop low self-esteem, where negative self-perception and guilt from their action diminish their sense of self-worth, which can often made worse by criticism from society. Next are educational disruptions. There's usually a noticeable drop in grades due to their lack of motivation, focus, and interest in schoolwork. Hence, they struggle to keep up with exam and assignments. Their school attendance also declines, where missing school days interrupt their learning and academic progress, hence creating a cycle of academic failure. Another major effect is social isolation. Delinquent behavior strain peers' relationship. Friends may distance themselves, and as a result, these teens begin relying more on delinquent peers, causing the cycle to repeat itself. They may also face rejection from peers, the community, and even their family members, which can prevent them from developing a healthy social relationship that are important for their future success.
Thank you, Prof. Damia. Dr. Ain, what about the effect on families?
Okay, thank you. The next area is the effects on families. The first is the emotional toll. Parents live with constant stress and worry about their child's safety and the possibility of further legal trouble. This persistent anxiety often leads to health issues and sleep disturbance. There is also a strong sense of guilt, where parents blame themselves for their child's behavior. Feeling like they have failed can lead to depression. Secondly, delinquent behaviors create strained relationships. Family ties can become damaged or even broken due to the child's action and legal consequences. Some juveniles face rejection or lack of support from their parents or siblings, deepening their emotional divide within the family. There is also a significant financial burden. Legal fees, such as attorneys, court expenses and fines, can be substantial and drain family resources. Parents may also face loss of income as they need to take time off of work to handle legal issues, attend court hearings or join counselling sessions. This leads to lost wages and additional financial hardship.
And lastly, Prof. Damia, what are the effects on communities?
So lastly, the effects on communities. One major outcome is the decline in social cohesion. Communities with high juvenile crime experience increase fear and insecurity. Social trust become reduced, hence weakening the community bond and discouraging social activities. Another effect is the cycle of delinquency. In communities with high delinquency rates, disconnected youth are more likely to engage in criminal behavior. So when social networks and support system are weak, young people become more vulnerable to negative peer influence and lack access to positive role models. This allows the cycle of delinquency to continue from one generation to the next.
Thank you to both of our panelists for the detailed explanations earlier. To conclude today's discussion, I would like to highlight some preventive measures that can help reduce juvenile delinquency. First, we look at the role of family support. Children require attention throughout the psychological development process. The love and attention a child receives during childhood will be reflected in their emotional and psychological growth. A supportive family environment helps children feel secure, valued, and guided away from negative influences. Next is education intervention. Schools play a major role in shaping young people's successful development by providing nurturance and opportunities to build cooperative social relationships as well as social and psychological skills. Because of this, many preventive programs have been designed for delivery in schools, including early childhood and preschool settings, to support healthy developments and prevent delinquent behavior before it begins. Finally, we have rehabilitation. Rehabilitation focuses on treating the criminal mentality in the child. It must be emphasized to the child that past offences cannot be repeated in the future. Through proper guidance, rehabilitation shapes their mentality so they can grow into responsible individuals. Child offenders are taught to make the right decisions and to understand the consequences of their actions, whether to themselves or others. These preventive measures, family support, school intervention, and rehabilitation are essential in helping us build a safer environment and guide our youth toward a more positive future. In conclusion, juvenile delinquency is influenced by many factors: family, media, economic pressure, education, psychology, and social environment. With cooperation between families, schools, and communities, we can reduce these risks and help our youth build a proper future. Thank you for our panelists and audience.